So where did you spend the bulk of your time at? I'm sure you were all over the place, but talk about the institutions that you served time at.
Well, I started at Greensville Correctional Center, and I stayed there from 1992 to 1999. I was transferred to Nottoway Correctional Center, to which I stayed from 1999 to 2002. From 2002 to 2008, I stayed at Southampton Correctional Center until they shut that particular institution down. From 2008 to 2010, I went to Green Rock Correctional Center. And now, 2010, that's when they allowed Pennsylvania to come. They didn't shut the institution down, but they kind of set it so that the whole institution was Pennsylvania, because I guess the contracts were more money, bringing in more money. Then they sent me back to Greensville. And from Greensville, from 2010 to 2018, when I left out of prison, that's where I stayed at.
You've been all over the place in terms of prisons here in the state of Virginia. And you mentioned how you stayed living out of your bag 28 years in prison before you would end up getting exonerated. Was there ever a point in time where you lost the hope that you would be getting released?
No, I took a lot of heavy blows because I was getting turned down like with 3 year. They say like they call them 3 year hits. Like
3 year deferrals.
Yeah, deferrals, yes sir. So I go up. I started going up like 1999. Well, my first answer back, I figured, look, I'm gonna be going home because I didn't do the crime. I tell the people, you go to parole, you tell them, and so when I went, I was like, okay, I'm going home. I'm preparing myself. I'm running and doing push-ups. I'm trying to get my little documents, my book stuff in my books because I want to get my stuff immediately published because I didn't want to get them published inside. So, about 5 or 6 months later, I got my answer back. They say 3 year deferral. I'm like, what is this? 3 year? What did it mean? I checked with the older time guy. He's like, well, man, that means you don't go back up for 3 years. I said, what? Then I waited 3 years after. I told the people, look, I didn't do this crime, man. Such just going on and that. By the time I went up the second time, the first level of DNA came out, which they had used to convict me in the court system because they said it was like 14 particulars just like mine, and it couldn't have been anybody else. You know what I mean? But when my family, they had hired, and just so happened the Department of Defense, somehow, it was a blessing. They tested it and they told the lawyers, look, it could have been him because one, the DNA that they found, whoever it was, they had markers for Caucasian. So whoever it was, their mother had to be, mitochondrially, their mother had to be white, right?
So it was a mixed individual that did this.
Well, the DNA that they found, I don't know whether or not, maybe sometimes, they can have more than the other.
Right.
Well, I know mine because, like I said, my mom's go to the doctor a lot and I had stuff done. So I know what bulk of that blood is. But the man just told him point blank, it's not the dude's. It's not his hair. So I looked at hope in that. But I had a lawyer. I can't say anything too much about him because he passed away recently. I had a lawyer that really didn't understand DNA at the time. It wasn't very popular.
It was brand new.
Pretty much brand new. It didn't work. Matter of fact, it was supposed to be a 21-day rule, but he put it in late, and so therefore I'm like, well, man, that means I'm not going to be able to get out on this. I'm thinking because everybody in the institution thought, look, the DNA's not done there. They thought, look, this is 2001. I said, man, I'm about to go out of here. But then come to find out later on, the man like, look, I didn't do anything with it. I'm like, man, you messed my opportunity up. Had to wait 3 years later. Then I had to wait for the writ of actual innocence come out. But by that time, even though the DNA, the facts remain the same, that it wasn't me, nevertheless, you got a lot of statutes in the law that pretty much you got to have it in at this time. So therefore, I spent time, I said, you know what, maybe they'll give me a shot. I've always been an individual, I'm gonna try to take a shot. I took my shot and I ended up getting caught, but because I kind of did it backwards, because at the time I was doing it pro se.
You're filing this on your own behalf instead of the lawyer who didn't put it in time.
Right.
You're just going to file it anyways and see if you can still get it entered into as evidence.
Yeah. Because you don't never lay down. You're never supposed to lay down, especially when you're wrongfully done. You never lay down. Period. And so I said, well, you know what, I'm gonna put in. They gave me rhythm as far as they acknowledged whether we acknowledge the DNA is not yours, how be it, because of the fact that it's you put it in too late, I can't do anything.
Which is the craziest thing to think about, because who would even care at that point that it's too late, the DNA is not yours?
Like I said, with them, like I said, it just didn't matter, right? And so I just waited to something else, and I just kept on fighting, and I kept putting stuff back in. Then finally in 2005, I got rhythm. I kept going back and forth to court because there was some other DNA that needed to be tested. And they at this time, the prosecutor had said at the time, well, look, we didn't look at it because the majority of the DNA, they didn't look at it microscopically or anything. They said, well, we pretty much, it's not his, because they were like, why are you saying that, right? They said because a lot of the DNA we found, they just looked at it surface-wise, right? And so they had it was destroyed, supposedly destroyed. So it's 2005, I kept going back and forth to court, but I had won that hearing. But by the time it came around, there was some funny play going on with the DNA. They said it had just been destroyed. And then you fast forward to 2016, they found out that they had actually found the packages of DNA to be tested that was supposedly had been destroyed in 2005.
As you're sharing with us the DNA evidence and everything that would lead up to you ultimately getting exonerated, I want to add something into this conversation as well real quick, and that is, while serving all of this time that you did, almost 3 decades in prison, I'm oftentimes asked, Joe, when you were locked up, did you ever meet anybody who was innocent? And one thing that I say, and I sometimes laugh and joke about this, and it's probably in poor taste, but I say, you meet a lot of people who tell you that they're innocent. In fact, something that guys may even say is, everybody says that they're innocent in prison. I want to ask you specifically, while serving time, do you feel like you were locked up with other individuals who were innocent as well?
I've met some guys, because sometimes guys pass. I was a guy who was always involved in the mentoring process and things. Even though I was younger, I still guys who looked up to me like that. And so, I mentor guys in scripture or ministry and all those things. I have been well studied. So I met guys along the way that guys would point to me and say, hey man, he said, talk to Darnell about that. He might know somebody, because I reached out to a lot of groups. And so when I got a chance to read a lot of the cases and my feel of the guys, then couple it with the information from their case, the guys were obviously innocent. And several of them right now, they're out now exonerated. My brother Thomas Hainsworth from Richmond. I ain't know Earl Washington too much, but I figured he couldn't have did that. Earl Washington, Earl Ruffin, all those guys, I had met or did time with, right? It's just something there. It's just something there, right? You know what I mean? And I had met a lot of guys who were innocent. Yes, I have.
And the individuals who you just mentioned, they're all exonerated?
They're all out, yeah. They're all out. But see, the thing is, that's how I knew. I said, okay, man, wow, you can tell. And somehow, even a guy named Joe Holland, right? We were side by side with each other. It's like somehow, you know that saying, they say that when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, it was like this, right? Every time I need to go to a certain level, because there are times you get weary. You don't want to give up, but you do get weary and you need some fuel to go on. And so I always ran across individuals who were further along in their journey than me, like a guy when I had only been doing like 7 years. Well, on the 7th year, the guy beside me, he had been doing 14 years wrongfully incarcerated, to which he got out shortly after. But he had newspaper articles about his case and all those things. And he would tell me, we would talk and chat back and forth, because we felt like it was like a family thing, kind of like, you locked up wrongfully. You know his story, he knows your story. So I might go knock on his door when I feel a teeny bit discouraged or something, right? And he'll say, man, I don't want to see. He said, stop that old baby talk. I did 14 years wrongfully. I don't want to hear that crap. We just joke back and forth, right? And then I might go to his room and say, oh man, you lazy. I might go in there and say, get your lazy tail out that bed, man. 14 years and took everything from you. You get up, be strong, talk trash with each other, right? But we all knew, with us, it wasn't in bad taste. It was just that we knew the feeling. And then we would finally say, after we joked a little bit, it might be like, well, bruh, that day gonna come for you. He would say that to me. And I said, you know what? I said, I know it is. Then I would say, man, I said, yeah, you're on your way out the door too, right? And he's like, yeah, you know it. And I got a chance to see that brother, once he left going to court, I got a chance to see that brother not leave out the courtroom and any of those things, but I got a chance to see the brother leave. and he was on his way to court. And they didn't bring him back at that time. He went somewhere else. And then when I got to another institution, like 2 years later, I hadn't heard anything. This lady was there. And she was telling me, she said, you know what, I heard a little bit about your story because I heard you talking, some of the inmates and stuff talking. And she said, you know a guy named Randolph? I said, Randolph? I said, what does he look like? She described him or whatever. I said, you talking about Joseph Randolph? She said, yeah, Holland. She described his wife and everything. I said, yeah. I said, you talking about Joseph who sings? He said, yeah, he sings at my church. He's one of the ministers at my church, and he has his own barbershop. I said, come on. She said, yeah, Joseph's out. Joseph's been out like a year and some change. He's doing well. I'm like, you see what I'm saying to you? So moments like that were like breaths of fresh air for me, because I'm like, okay, that's another one of my brothers who got out. Every time I hear about a dude getting exonerated, I don't care whether they were in Michigan or New York, like New York Central Park 5. I had met some of them recently. You know what I mean? Every time I heard about something like that, that felt like a win for me, because I'm saying if it's done for them, my turn is coming. Now, that was a long line, right? As you can see, because every time I seen it, I'm like, oh man, I gotta be next. I gotta be next. So, it came a time I kept saying, man, Lord, when is my turn gonna come? Then finally, things started happening. I had a New York Innocent Project, I had my case. Then they referred it over to UVA, and right after my dad died in 2009, I thought my lawyer was coming up to talk to me about, some type of stuff for a will or whatever. But it was a young guy in there. He was looking at me. I'm looking at him. Young white guy named Dennis. And so Dennis is like, all right, sir. I'm like, I don't know who he is, right? I'm looking for my lawyer. It's an older lady. And so when I walk in there, I look into the room. It's him. And he said, man, I talked to Michael. This is the guy who's my alibi witness. He said, I talked to Michael last night. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, he told me, man, you need to work that dude case. So that man didn't do that crime, man. He said, we know that. He said, I've been trying to get some. That man did not do that crime. And so the man sat down with me. He said, look, I got 6 months until I graduate from UVA. He said, I'm going to do my darndest to get you out of there, man. He said, can't make any promises. He said, but I'm going to do what I can, because 6 months is short. And so then more light kept coming to me. You know what I mean? And from that time on, from 2009 on up to even to right now, this present day, the UVA Innocence Project were the ones who were working with me. Yeah.
And it was through the UVA Innocence Project that would ultimately lead to you getting exonerated.
Yeah.
Would you talk to us about, what it would be, what it would take for that to actually happen?
What it would take now is it would take for the Supreme Court to just go ahead on and acknowledge the facts, acknowledge the facts of the case, because it's kind of hard. You got victim, you got DNA, you got proof that there was a corrupt officer involved in this thing. Yeah, you have all those things, You have some of the best legal minds in the country that have looked at this, And so I would need that. I would need the governor's hand to go ahead on and get it out of the way. You know what I mean?
To sign that official.
That's it. That's all I would need, right? So and I think now, I'm gonna be honest, I thank Virginia Parole Board, because like I said, they investigated long and hard for me, and to get me released out of there, right? I'm thankful for that. But like I said, for me to have the liberty that I really need to go about doing some of the things I really want to do, I would need that full exoneration.
Well, let's talk about you getting released from prison and what it would take for that to happen. Would it be the DNA evidence? Would it be this getting in front of the Supreme Court and for them to see all of the facts? There was never a confession. The DNA didn't match the police corruption. What would it actually be that led you to being released?
Well, UVA, they spoke with people. Like I said, they represented me. Sometimes you can have an attorney represent you for one of your parole hearings or whatever, right? And so while I was waiting for stuff to get done in courts, it just so happened they went ahead and, the victim had signed an affidavit saying, look, that's not the guy, and she was pretty much lobbying for me. I never met her, but she was the one lobbying for me.
It was really the victim who came forward.
Victim and the lawyers, yeah. Victim, the lawyers, DNA, and a lot of other things. Once you get to looking back over the case, like I told you, some of the greatest minds out there, man, have looked at this case, man. You have guys in the Innocent Project, they have a lot of resources. So they have some extremely good investigators. There's a guy, I can't mention his name, but he's in the Tidewater area. He was investigated for the federal prison. I mean federal government, and he also investigated for the police department. And so he investigated my case. He investigated. So he dug in this thing. Before they try to find you innocent, they try to do what they can to find you guilty. That's what they do. They have to investigate like that. I'm talking about like the UVA before they even, the Innocence Project before they deal with your case. Because they don't have the time to waste your time and resources.
And so many people probably reach out to them who potentially might not even be innocent.
Yeah, that happens a whole lot. Because, pretending one thing, because when you're dealing with them people like that, they're going to dig. And these people dug in and out. And even before they even could discover any of the other DNA that was out there, they said that outside of that, after they dug into it, they said, we're going to take this case. And I was like, man, these people are a blessing to me,
You would be exonerated 28 years later, and obviously we fast forwarded through so much. There's so much that we could go back and really focus on, but I really just wanted to give people a broad oversight of your prison story. You would eventually end up getting exonerated. Talk to us about what it was like that day when you found out that you were getting released.
Well, I had to go through a program for like 5 months, right? Because what they did was they paroled me out because, that's the fastest way to do things. And so, they, with all those facts in mind, they paroled me out. And we had put in the pardon and everything for that, which we're still waiting for them to go ahead and complete that process. So what they did was, on that day, when I found out I was getting out, that was the most, man, it's indescribable, man. It was an indescribable feeling because when you're behind the bars, that's one thing that rolls through your mind. One day is coming. You don't know when that day is coming. But once the reality of it comes, it's like a dream. See, to me, it was like a dream, man, because that's what I kept in the forefront of my mind every day, all those years. It's like sitting waiting for something to happen, and decades. And then when it finally does, they come that morning and you hear that knock, because it's hard for you to accept it that finally someone has heard me. Finally, you get an opportunity to fulfill every dream, desire, even get married to my fiance, be home with my family, start a business, start a ministry. Those things you want to do if you got any type of just any humanity in you that just craves to live, not just sit there and exist in prison, but to live. And so things just came alive for me. That very moment, they came that morning to knock, and they took me probably about 2:00 in the morning, right? Of course, you got to go through the last little formalities before you leave out. But the whole time, I felt like it was a dream. Even when I got to a place, I really knew it was real then when they took me over to, I think it was Indian Creek, I think. And, they had to pick somebody up. And so they said, look, these guys here, they are, they're prisoners, and they will transfer them over to another institution. So I'm going to have to keep the cuffs on you until they get out of the van. He said, but I'm going to take them off immediately after. I said, okay, fine, right? And so I'm like, this is the last little formality or whatever, right? And so I've always looked at the guys with the khakis on. Because I'm like, man, one day I'm going to have those. I would say that every time I seen a guy go out for 28 years, I said, I'm going to have those, man. I'm going to have some of those on. And so that morning, I was the dude with the khakis on. And dudes were like, oh, man, you getting out, man. Yeah, everybody, dudes were hollering and stuff. Because dudes know your journey, because prior to me leaving out, it was a lot of media exposure. You catch me? So, I dealt with that, right? Officers were waiting. Sometimes it was a lull in it. Might be a month later, like, man, dog, they ain't released you yet. Man, they know this about your case. They haven't released you. But then finally that morning when they saw them khakis, everybody knew it was real. And so when they got the guys out of the van when we were at St. Brian, Indian Creek, that day the dude took the handcuffs off me. He said, well, you won't need these no more. And I'm like, I'm sitting and people just talking to you just like, well, look, you're a free man now. And so when I got to the parole office, after hours, like I said, keep in mind, I was up since 2:00 that morning. When I got to the parole office, I met my, parole officer and everything like that. Very nice lady, very kind lady. She had been talking to my lawyers. Everybody had been waiting for me. She said, Philip, somebody want to talk. They said, Darnell, somebody want to talk to you out front. I'm like, who? So as soon as I went up front, the dude, Dennis, who had worked my case, who promised that, look, man, I'm trying to get you out of here. Even though it had been 9 years later, right? He was in the front. Then the rest of the students at UVA, some of the law students, they were there. Then, hugging them and talking to them because they had been working on my case. So you get pretty intimate when the individual working on your case over years and years. And then all of a sudden they said, darn, there was somebody else out here. So they opened the door. Look who it is, the media out there, Jason Marks, and some out there, recording. And then UVA had their own people out there, they're recording and they're taking pictures. And so, I'm seeing my mother. I hadn't seen my mom in a while because, my mom had become sick and she had a stroke like 6 months before I got out. So she couldn't really remember all those years I had been locked up. I'm kind of glad of that too, though, right? And so getting a chance to see my niece and all these other people. I had never seen my niece on the outside of the prison wall because she was only 25. She's only 25 now. I was locked up 28 years. So it was a dream, man. And everybody asked me, well, you want to go to eat, man? And come on, take some pictures over here. They got it. It's on the internet. You can see it. Man, take some pictures, man. Man, put your hands in the air. Do this so I'm taking pictures, man. I'm like, man, this really happening, man. This is crazy. And it was raining outside. But you know what? I didn't even feel the rain. I thought about the rain later on, but I'm like, man, the rain not gonna ruin my moment. It's not gonna ruin my moment, So I got back. I got to the restaurant. I think it was Ruby Tuesdays. It was Ruby Tuesdays. Went to Ruby Tuesdays, and sometimes in prison, man, you really. Where I was at, dude, steal the sugar so much out the kitchen, you don't get a sweet drink. You know what I mean? You might get a kind of drink, kind of like semi, might taste a little bit like what it's supposed to be, but it's not. Well, that day was the first time in a long time I really had, except for a commissary, a real good cold drink. I had blackened tilapia fish. It was no longer that, I call it gutter fish that they give at the institution, and shrimps, and then the lady calling me, you know what I mean? And you're being treated with importance. Somebody coming serving you, not people just throwing some out the window. Hey, get on, man. That's how guys sometimes is. They're behind the wall. They might throw the food out, and you might, man, I don't want that stuff, man, But that day, even though I had been treated with such respect behind bars, finally, I'm out here, somebody serving me, sir. You don't hear a lot of that in prison, you know what I mean? Sir, can I, what do you want? And I'm like, well, man, I got this choice now. So I went ahead and ordered my seafood I wanted, and my fiance was there, and I hadn't been outside with her in the free world since I was like 18 because I met her then. She was a friend of mine then, but I hadn't been out there with her, so we had never had a chance to date and all those things. I don't know, man. It was like a dream, literally. It was really like a dream, man. Then finally, I hadn't been to my house in 28 years, so when I'm out there looking, I have a niece that I hadn't seen since she was a baby. Because of the rules of the institution, I couldn't see her. So she was 15 years old. So you think about, I have cousins now that I'm meeting that they weren't even born. Some of them are married and got kids now. And I'm like, man, but their father may have told them, your cousin Darnell, blah, blah. They tell them the story and everything. I'm like, one little guy, a lot of the little cousins I had around me when I was a kid, when I was younger, they're grown men, got kids, they're married, they got their own home, they got their own careers, went through college and all those things. And I'm like, man, did I miss all this? See, you miss time, but when you get out, you see you only see a little bit, you see little slivers of it from the prison. But when I got out, I saw the whole picture. I said, man, I miss all this life, And so, the only way to describe it, man, would be a dream, really. Even now as I talk about it, man, I haven't been out 10 months yet, but it's still like a dream. And even like I say, you called, I'm gonna tell you what was funny when you called, right? I was like, who the world is Joe's girl?
There we go.
No, but for real, it's just the number. I'm like, well, I'm looking. I said, okay, and I talked to him when you told me who you were. When I heard your voice, I said, oh, he got to be this is what I said to myself. I said, you know what? I said, okay, he got to be a talk show guy or something. That's just your voice. You just got that feel about you. You know what I mean? That's beautiful. And so I said, okay. And when you said look at it, so immediately while you were talking, I was looking on the other phone. I said, okay. I said, yeah, dude's doing something good. He's doing something good for people, right? And to me, that was a real blessing because I never expected the story to still. It's constantly getting. I'm constantly saying getting resuscitated. Because even with the media, people still calling me from Indiana, Oklahoma, Michigan, dudes from the prison, you know, like, look, man, families and communities, they're actually still calling based upon just that story from last week, right? And so to me, it feels like a restoration in my life, if that makes sense, right? I feel like a restoration that, man, people really do care. People really do care that this happened. Because, you know, sometimes you think, well, people really don't give a crap that this happened. Sometimes I have to grab myself. I say, hold on, man. Because a lot of things I don't really know yet still. Because keep in mind, I was gone so long, and I'm trying to learn. And it'll get a little frustrating because I'm like, okay, well, why don't I know this? And then I had a cousin, he always say, he'll tap me, he said, bruh, he said, man, you've been locked up 28 years. He said, this stuff just came out a couple years ago. He said, how you going to know it? I said, okay, man. He said, you feel like you should know it. He said, but you're not going to know everything because I'm the type, I want to know. I want to be in the know. I want to be up to par, you know, but I realize now every day, more and more every day, you know what? Give myself a break because, you know, something happened to me. I was gone. Something happened to me. I'm not gonna let that scar me, but you'll catch up. I'm like myself. I said, I'll catch up and be even further. Not than other people, but far as for myself. You know what I mean? That's what I look at.